we gather in this sacred space, made more sacred in this moment by the presence and attention of each and every one of us. Last week, we welcomed people by live stream from local cities, no international visitors, but we are pleased to welcome folks from Rhode Island and Connecticut and East Harlem in New York City. To our live streaming friends, regardless of where you may be logging on from, we are glad that you are here. In a spirit of welcome, those who are gathered here in the sanctuary, I invite you to turn towards the camera near the welcoming congregation banner and offer your welcome to our folks who are live streaming at home. And now those who are here in the sanctuary, let's turn and greet one another. Good morning and welcome to worship with the Winchester Unitarian Society. This is a community that welcomes the full inclusion of all those who choose to gather here, no matter the flags of your heritage, the money in your account, or the hope in your heart. Here we believe that compassion is the answer to many of life's troubles, love is gender-affirming care, and no matter if we crawl or walk or roll through life, it is better when we travel together. Our welcome is always an affirmation and an aspiration, as it is human to fall short of high ideals. But above all, this is, as Unitarian theologian James Luther Adams might say, a place where we practice what it means to be human. On behalf of all who are gathered, I name our thanks that each and every one of us has chosen to engage in this spiritual practice called worship together. I am the Reverend Heather Janulis, and it's my honor to serve as parish minister here at the Winchester Unitarian Society. After worship, all are invited downstairs to Metcalf Hall for the return of the annual chili cook-off. Woo! This is also a fundraiser for our youth group's service trip. If chili is not your thing, our cook-off also includes mac and cheese. There'll be something for every taste and dietary need, so please come and please come hungry. On behalf of our congregation, I'm delighted to welcome back into our chancel the Reverend Mary Margaret Earl, Senior Minister and Executive Director of the Unitarian Universalist Urban Ministry in nearby Roxbury. Reverend Earl will be leading today's service. Last week, we explored the idea of spiritual community as a place to learn justice making within ourselves, within our walls, and out in the world. One could say that Mary Margaret is offering a second part to this conversation, speaking to the reality that such learning comes not just through new information, but through practice, which includes a combination of commitments, mistakes, and successes. Today, she asks the question, how do the lessons from tending, trying, failing, and trying again teach us to keep moving forward in our justice work? The Reverend Mary Margaret Earl has served as Executive Director and Senior Minister of the Unitarian Universalist Urban Ministry for 8 years. In this ministry, she has worked to strengthen bonds between UUs and the Roxbury neighborhood where the UU-UM exists. She has served on the Faith and Solidarity Leadership Team and the Roxbury Cultural Network. Prior to her arrival at the urban ministry, she spent 10 years at a faith-based nonprofit in Rhode Island serving the homeless community. She is past president of the board of the Rhode Island Coalition for the Homeless, recipient of the Heroes of Faith Award from the Rhode Island State Council of Churches for her interfaith work, and received a Courage of Conscience Award from the Peace Abbey in Sherborn, Massachusetts. She is a longtime vegan, and I think we have some vegan chili downstairs, and committed to standing up for non-human animals. Let us give her a warm wuss welcome. And let us open our hearts and minds to the spirit of worship with her words.
Nothing changed last night. The dark fell and the moon rose, its light casting across the water. Every struggle still waited. Nothing changed last night. We exhaled and slept, maybe fitfully. Nothing changed. And yet, we rise again. We rise with the gifts the universe has embedded in every cell of us. Gifts of song, of dance, of laughter, gifts of wisdom and strength and courage. Nothing changed last night, but a new day gives itself to our hearts, to our will, to this community, a day ready for us, needing us, welcoming us. Come, let us worship and begin again. As the days lengthen and green buds and daffodil shoots follow the light above and around us, may we also pay attention, listen, and follow the light within us. I thank the Urban Ministry Delegate, Patty Cameron, for lighting our chalice this morning.
Please rise in body or in spirit to join in singing our first hymn, Seed of Hope. This is an original hymn composed by Director of Music John Kramer. It is printed in your order of service, and for folks at home, it will appear on your screen. I invite the young people and those who are young at heart to come forward for our first reflection. Good morning, everyone. So the story I'm going to tell this morning is a true story, and it's a story in which I need your help and your help in the pews. So I wasn't here at church last year at this time. I was on sabbatical, and sabbatical is something when someone in a church or a university, they leave for a while, and they leave to do some different work, and they leave to rest. I think we all could benefit from a little bit more rest. Let's take a deep breath together. That feels so good. So it was good to get that rest, but I missed all of you. And when I came back, I had a sense that you missed me too, because the community gave me a special gift. They gave me a peace lily, and Brenna's going to show you what the peace lily looked like, and let's put it on the screen and show it to the folks at home. And they gave me this peace lily as a way of saying, we see that you are in a place of peace from all that rest, and we hope the peace stays with you. Well, I was very touched by that, and I wanted to keep this peace lily happy and healthy, but there's one problem. I'm not so great at taking care of plants. So if someone gave you a special plant, what might you do to keep it healthy? Yes. Ask my mom. Excellent, yes. Water the plant, yes. Give it some seeds, yes. Read a few books about it. And Zara? Watch videos about it. And Max will give the last suggestion. Yes, Max. Give it water. I also thought maybe we can put it in front of a window to give it sunshine. Yeah. So, excuse me? Yeah, if the plant's wilting, it's not a good sign. That is an excellent cue for Brenna to bring forward the plant in question, which there's good news and bad news about the plant. Can we put a photo of this plant up on the screen so people can see it better and see it at home? So the good news is that it's still alive, and most of it's green, but it has streaks of black in the leaves. And in general, like, black leaves is not a good sign. It is growing some new flowers. That's a good sign. But in general, it does not look the same. It's not as healthy. So maybe it needs some fertilizer. But I think you're onto something, because I'm now realizing that I did all the right things. I've given it water. I have put it by the window. I looked up some things on YouTube, and they say that peace lilies will turn black if they get too much water or too little water. So what are we going to do? So I think, maybe talking to your mom who's good at plants, that's an excellent idea. Maybe reading some books, watching more videos. Let's listen and see what the plant can tell us. Even listening doesn't give us a lot of information. But at the very least, I think I need to pay better attention to my plant, because I don't want just my plant to survive. I want it to thrive. I want us to be partners. So there's one more thing that you all can do. We talked about water, we talked about light, we talked about fertilizer, we talked about getting help, we talked about doing research, but we haven't talked about prayer. So what if you and everyone in the pews had a prayer for my plant? And the best way to do this is if at the count of 3, we all shouted, "Keep peace alive." Ready? 1, 2, 3. Keep peace alive. Thank you. And so I invite our folks in the pews to sing the children to their RE classes. now invite us into a time of centering, first through words and then through ritual, kindling of the light, a time to light a candle here in the sanctuary or at home to signify a joy or sorrow that you carry within. At this time, if you would like to have a candle brought to you, please raise your hand. This morning, I have already lit a candle for Alberto Arroz, currently at Leahy Hospital, who is gravely ill. I also hold in my heart his wife Zareen and their family in this sad time. In highlights, we invited people to bring a card for me to hand deliver to them or to sign a card. If you have a card or would like to add your good wishes to our collective card, please find me in Metcalf Hall after worship. After we kindle the light, we'll be together for a time of shared silence, out of which we will remain seated as we sing hymn number 315 in the gray hymnal, This Old World. Let us begin with a meditation led by Mary Margaret.
I invite us to breathe in and out. Creative Spirit, at work in every nook and cranny of our earth, and every nook and cranny of our hearts, we center in you now. In this in-between time when the ground is covered still in last season's leaves, not yet full blooming with next season's growth, we learn to wait, to be, to inhale, to exhale, to count as precious this breath and this and this, and enter into this full, perfect moment. Let us now kindle this light.
This morning's reading is by Robin DiAngelo from her book, White Fragility. African-American scholar and filmmaker Omowale Akintunde says, racism is a systemic, societal, institutional, omnipresent, and epistemologically embedded phenomenon that pervades every vestige of our reality. For most whites, however, racism is like murder. The concept exists, but someone has to commit it in order for it to happen. This limited view of such a multi-layered syndrome cultivates the sinister nature of racism and, in fact, perpetuates racist phenomena rather than eradicates them. The good-bad frame is a false dichotomy. All people hold prejudices, especially across racial lines in a society deeply divided by race. I can be told that everyone is equal by my parents. I can have friends of color, and I may not tell racist jokes. Yet I'm still affected by the forces of racism as a member of society in which racism is the bedrock. I will still be seen as white, treated as white, and experience life as a white person. My identity, personality, interests, and investments will develop from a white perspective. I will have a white worldview and a white frame of reference. In a society in which race clearly matters, our race profoundly shapes us. If we want to challenge this construct, we must make an honest accounting of how it is manifest in our own lives and in the society around us.
Mother Earth, beloved garden, living treasure.
lovely, thank you. So, good morning again. Good morning. It is lovely to be back in Winchester today. A big thank you to my good colleague, the Reverend Heather, for inviting me back and for all her patient coordination for today's service. And thank you to John Kramer for bringing the service more fully to life with music. This, I think, is my first visit here, certainly since the pandemic began, but even it seems like it's been a little while, so it's good to be able to be here in person to update you on the work of the urban ministry, and also to thank you for all the ways you have supported us. Winchester has, amazingly, more than 20 people who've been supporters for more than 10 years, and there are 6 folks who've been giving to us for more than 25 years, which is amazing, so thank you for this faithfulness. And Winchester is a congregation that also supports us each year with a grant for which we are very grateful, so thank you. I want to lift up a few of those who've been good friends of the urban ministry: Maggie and the late John Russell, Vicki and Peter Coccoluto, the Daceys, Kate Ebbett, the Ericksons, Roy and Leora Cummings, Sarah Delano and Bill Zink, the Fonseca Whirlers, and Kathy Richardson. I especially want to, this morning, lift up folks who, in our urban ministry universe, have been faithful, bright lights in their service and support, and that is Peter and Vicki Coccoluto, both of whom have served on the board at different times of the urban ministry and show up all the time when we ask things of them and raise their hand, and they're just these quiet, sustaining champions. So I especially just really want to thank you, the Coccolutos, for all that you do for the urban ministry. If after the service you are interested in learning more about the work of the urban ministry, my colleague Annie Stubbs is here. I don't know if Vinny is here, but I also will lift up that the delegates to the urban ministry from Winchester are Reverend Heather, Patty Cameron, and Gordy McIntosh. So you can also ask questions of them if you're interested. So this season, with its still cold mornings and its gray skies, is the time that our gardens sleep. But it's also the time when our dreams of the garden have begun again. The seed catalogs have arrived, and we've sort of shaken off the fatigue that we felt at the end of the last garden season when we were dealing with that heat last summer, and we were still pulling weeds and grappling with fading plants. Now we begin to again imagine the possibilities. What might we plant this spring? We might sketch out the rows in our vegetable gardens, imagine the perennial and annual flowers we'll plant. Are there any gardeners here? See the hands slowly raising. So I have been a gardener since I was 11, and I went in my backyard and I turned over some dirt and I planted carrots too closely, never thinned, that emerge as these kind of gargantuan bulbs with multiple spindly carrot legs. And I've continued over many years to dig in the soil, plant seeds, grow vegetables, always a somewhat impatient and impulsive gardener. Are there any impatient and impulsive gardeners? Yes, I feel you. So last winter, I decided to slow down and deepen my gardening practice, and I enrolled in a master gardening certification program. And I'd be lying if I said I wasn't secretly drawn to the idea of becoming a master gardener, an expert holding impressive knowledge beyond that of ordinary gardeners. Instead, it was like this. It was like having this door opened, not to mastery, but to the vastness of all that I don't know. And what I earned my certification in was a certification of knowing all that I don't know, that I formerly didn't know that I didn't know, and that in fact, I will never fully know. Instead of tips on fertilizing tomatoes was this world of what it means to tend to the earth right around me, from the value of native plants to the danger of invasive species to how rain will flow off our roofs and through the gutter spouts, and if it flows onto a paved surface, will go into the stormwater and pollute the bay. The thing that I most clearly learned in my master gardening course is that if master gardener means being an expert, then I will never be one. I will always be learning and failing and trying again. And that is just what it feels like in my work at the Urban Ministry. That is just what it feels like to begin the work of racial justice, to begin a journey that shows me far more than I ever imagined, that I will never be an expert in, and that is more essential than I once understood. And so it is good to be here with you this morning to share my journey with you. Winchester is one of 46 Unitarian Universalist congregations around Greater Boston that are members of the Unitarian Universalist Urban Ministry. And we are a 190-year-old nonprofit founded by the Reverend Joseph Tuckerman, a Unitarian minister. Reverend Tuckerman was committed to listening to those who were oppressed and to educating privileged Bostonians about poverty and the injustice that created that poverty. He became known as a father of modern social work. He merged the justice work of several Unitarian congregations, and the Urban Ministries member congregations have been central to its work since. Over time, we've done many things. We've built elder housing, created an Asian-appropriate food pantry, had a free legal clinic. In 1976, one of the Urban Ministries member congregations, First Church in Roxbury, folded. The church had been founded in Roxbury in the 1600s by the Puritans, and the congregation had worshiped there through the centuries. Roxbury in time became an affluent white Boston suburb. But by the 1970s, the urban and suburban landscapes were changing, and Roxbury had become the heart of Boston's African American community. Throughout the decades in Boston, government-sanctioned covenant restrictions, redlining, and racist FHA and HUD policies had sparked an exodus of white people from city to suburbs, while African Americans could only find housing in neighborhoods like Roxbury, where the housing stock was older, where banks refused home improvement loans, and where the government had disinvested. In that context, the congregation of First Church Roxbury dwindled. So First Church Roxbury's last members decided to close, and they bequeathed their property and historic buildings, Boston's oldest surviving wood-frame church building and a nearby parish hall on an abundant green space overlooking the Boston skyline, to us. And that's where I arrived 8 years ago. Our programs were a domestic violence shelter, youth programming, and weekend activities for young children. But beneath that array of programs pulsed something else. It was the work of confronting racism in Greater Boston. Our location cried out for it. That wasn't what I signed up for, though. On my first week at work, the killers of Michael Brown were not indicted. You may remember that Michael Brown was an 18-year-old African-American youth shot and killed by police in Ferguson, Missouri in 2014. That week, the staff of the Urban Ministry asked me to make a public statement on the death of Michael Brown and on the fact that the officers who killed him were not held accountable. I sat in my office that evening, nervous. I lit a candle, I breathed. That was my moment of vulnerability and uncertainty. I didn't want to make a statement because I was new, and I didn't know what to think about the killing of Michael Brown, and I didn't know how to talk about racism, and that wasn't the work that I had come to do. I had come to run programs to help people. That's what I came to do. But what I was called to do was a whole other matter. The urban ministry was given an extraordinary gift of location, one that we are called to live into. We are grounded in this amazing community of Roxbury. Its story tells the national story of racism, urban renewal, and segregation. And it also tells the story of resilience, Black community organizing and resistance, and cultural richness. And we are encircled by communities and neighborhoods also shaped by racism in reverse, shaped by policies that have given benefit to people who are white, policies that have kept these neighborhoods white by design, and that have UU congregations in the center of them, congregations who are called to dismantle racism and have the power to make change. This is an extraordinary opportunity for our faith to do the work of dismantling racism and real justice. Over time, this work at the intersection of communities has cured me of my reluctance to deal with race. I learn daily about the history of racism and how racism is foundational in this country and that it shows up in every single system. It is the root cause of enormous suffering, from the racial wealth gap to health disparities to the heart of the prison industrial complex, to the reason why our communities are so segregated. Here are a few of the measures of the impact of racism from the Brookings Institute. 1 in 3 Black men born in 2001 will spend time in prison in their lifetime. According to the Prison Policy Initiative, the juvenile justice system confines Black youth at 4 times the rate of white youth. 1 in 3 Black families have 0 or negative wealth. Many of us by now have heard the statistics from the Federal Reserve that show that in Boston, white Bostonians have a net worth, which is your net assets minus your debts, of $247,000, while Black Bostonians have a net worth of just $8. In the United States, 1 in 3 Black children live in poverty, 3 times as likely to do so as white children. 1 in 7 children who are Black suffer from asthma, and according to the Asthma and Allergy Foundation of America, Black Americans are 3 times as likely to die as asthma, one example of a health indicator. The average lifespan in Roxbury is 30 years less than it is 1 mile away in Whiteback Bay. Meanwhile, white people continue to hold most of the power, control, and resources. D'Angelo gives these examples from 2016-2017, which may have changed a little by now, but not by much. The 10 richest Americans are 100% white. US Congress, 90% white. US governors, 96% white. Top military advisors, 100% white. People who decide what TV shows we see, 93% white. People who decide what books we read, 90% white. People who decide what news is covered, 85% white. Teachers, 82% white. Full-time college professors, 84% white. This is the world that we move in, where white people hold power and control of systems that still benefit and reflect us and that disadvantage Black Americans. About 2 years ago, the Urban Ministry adopted a new mission that faced that reality. We committed to dismantle racism and white supremacy culture and to advance racial, economic, and social justice. We know that we alone won't dismantle racism in Greater Boston, but we can use our strengths to make change in Greater Boston. Since adopting this new mission, we have been wrestling with how to now live into it, what programs and work to change, to begin, to reshape. It is hard and messy work. It takes trying and learning and rolling up our sleeves. And lessons from the garden are those that I carry into this work too. Here are my lessons from the garden. Lesson 1, test the soil. That is, what is in this soil? What is our history? What is beneath our feet? The urban ministry is committed to examining our history, the inherited history of the First Church Roxbury, and the history of the urban ministry. We engaged a researcher to look into the history of enslavers and the enslaved related to First Church Roxbury's congregation. He recently completed the first phase of his research, which showed a depth of enslavement related to the church with even its very first minister, an enslaver. Earlier this last month, we released a public report on it and gathered the community around us to hear it, and we are determining next steps to interpreting that history. I shared this morning the history of how we inherited our historic campus by white flight in 1976 because it's important that we name inheriting this space in the heart of Roxbury from a white congregation. That is part of our legacy. We need to look more closely at the urban ministry as an historically white organization, to look at our own stories and our own mistakes. We all need to do this work. In Robin DiAngelo's book, White Fragility, we heard earlier the reading that included African-American scholar Amawale Akintunde, who said, quote, "Racism is a systematic, societal, institutional, omnipresent, and epistemologically embedded phenomenon that pervades every vestige of our reality," end quote. But for white people, DiAngelo says, it's invisible like water. We see race that is something that is part of the Black community like Roxbury, but not necessarily as part of our white communities and histories. And our work is to learn to see the water in which we are swimming. DiAngelo writes, quote, "Predominantly white neighborhoods are not outside of race. We are teeming with race," end quote. One way to see the water is in telling and holding up the histories that underpin our churches, our communities, our institutions. Lesson 2, fix the soil. At the urban ministry, we are committed to change from within. After the murder of George Floyd, our organization made clear commitments. One was researching our history. Another is ensuring greater representation of people of color on our board. Our priority is cultivating more community members so our board looks like the communities that we partner with. UUs, many of whom are white, former program participants, mostly people of color, and Roxbury community members of color. Today, 6 of 15 board members are people of color, and when I come back to you next year, I hope I will be able to tell you that it's closer to half. We have diversified our staff leadership and are recruiting volunteers of color so that at every level there is shared power. Without shared power, injustice persists. Fix the soil. Lesson 3, plant plants where they should be planted, which seems obvious, but for gardeners like me, not always. For years, I planted plants where I thought they would look good. So I didn't pay attention to the direction, the shade, the wind, and that's why I planted my sun-loving lilac bush under a large leafy tree where it didn't bloom at all. Likewise, we cannot create programs based on what staff or I or congregations think sound good. We need to hear what the community around us wants. So last summer, we convened focus groups of Roxbury business owners to ask how we can partner in closing the racial wealth gap. That information is helping to shape a pilot project to match pro bono skills from member congregations like yours with Black-owned businesses seeking to grow. We've been meeting too with Roxbury nonprofits to see how they want to partner with member congregations. One example of a nonprofit that we are in conversation with is City Life Vita Urbana, which protects the rights of tenants in Black neighborhoods facing eviction through gentrification. So they have asked us to help with some administrative tasks like mailings. I think some of you may have come and helped with a mailing to let tenants know their rights, and we're continuing to plan next efforts. We need to listen and then listen some more. There are wonderful opportunities to plant the right programs when we do. Lesson 4, pull weeds early. Over time, we have faced the legacy of well-intentioned but sometimes clumsy people who are white, like me, for example, seeking to do work in a Black community. I once met with a supporter of the urban ministry who said in passing how much he liked his neighborhood in the suburbs and said how it was so safe, and also then offhandedly said that it's all white. And I was taken aback. I wasn't sure what he was trying to say, and I was so surprised and taken aback that I was just silent. I didn't ask him what did he mean. It's a silence that I regret. I could have asked, so what do you mean by that? And begun a conversation about how he tied safety to whiteness. But instead, I allowed that weed to grow. When I came to the urban ministry, staff of color shared stories like that with me. They echo still and are painful. We're committed to doing better. We've been building a more robust onboarding program for volunteers and staff, one that includes cultural competence training, an understanding of Roxbury's history, and the government-sanctioned reasons why our communities are so segregated. White people need to enter communities of color not to fix or help, but with a humility born of an understanding of how injustice was created by design. And we all need to learn how to give and receive hard feedback when we say and do things that perpetuate racism and hurt. Every gardener knows you need to pull weeds as soon as you see them, and they do not go away by ignoring them. And finally, lesson 5. Truly lasting gardens are not built in a day. When we adopted our new mission statement in the spring of 2021, it was the end of a multi-year journey. But this mission statement is the beginning of another long journey, and it will take more than my own lifetime to complete it. What matters is that we stay the course, learning, stumbling, trying, and committed. When George Floyd was killed, so many of us flooded the streets to protest. We must ensure this commitment isn't a fad or a trend that we tire of. Our eyes have been opened. May they remain so. Last summer, after I'd had my Master Gardener course, I again grew tomatoes, and I don't know if it was the heat and the drought of last summer, but most of my crop was ruined. It was discouraging. But that failure was an opportunity to learn more. I learned how to improve my soil for this season. In gardening, you need to take the long view. A beautiful garden isn't built in a season. It will take years to learn and do and redo, years of letting things fill in and blossom, of reading and sharing and trying, of beginning again. The only real mistake is giving up. So I'm here this morning to invite you to deepen your work with us, to learn with us, to support us. This spring, we're rolling out our new walking tours to share the stories of Roxbury. Come in for a tour. We'll pilot in the year ahead the program to partner with Roxbury businesses. Sign up with Annie and share your expertise. We are again airing our community conversations, coming up on the last one of this season. In April, we'll highlight Carolyn Crockett talking about how to close the racial wealth gap. Just tune in from your own home. There are many ways to learn how to get involved. Last summer, my garden did not do all that I'd hoped. My potato crop was sparse, and you heard about my tomatoes, but I planted bushes of goldenrod for the pollinators that took, and salvia for the migrating hummingbirds. It remained deep purple late into autumn. I imagine what's possible as I persevere, and what's possible if we all do that. All keep trying and tending and never giving up. Amen, and may it be so.
To make an offering to the ministries of a congregation is to make a public affirmation of our values, an investment in what is possible, and an acknowledgement that our resources are not ours alone. The offering is, in this way, part of a collective Sunday morning spiritual practice. Part of this practice here at WUS is to share our gifts with organizations living out Unitarian Universalist values. This morning, we share our gifts with the Unitarian Universalist Urban Ministry, which Mary Margaret has been sharing so much about this morning. She also referenced the new mission and vision statement, which are to work across race and place, to dismantle racism and white supremacy culture, and to advance racial, social, and economic justice. The UU Urban Ministry envisions a greater Boston where all people live with freedom and dignity, and have equitable access to resources and opportunity to shape the present and the future. Here are the different ways you can donate. Those in the sanctuary may give cash, checks, or donate electronically, text to the number in your order of service, or visit our website under the giving page. Please write or type the date of your offering in the memo line or comment field. If you're visiting for the first time, either in person or online, you are our guest. The most valuable thing you can offer at this moment is your contact information so we can stay connected beyond this Sunday. In-person attendees will find a physical visitor card in the pew racks in front of you. Please complete it and put it into the collection plate. Information about how to give online and how to complete the virtual visitor card will soon be projected on the screen, so our friends live streaming at home will have access to this information. And after this information is displayed, all of us will view some of the contributions to UU Lent from this past week. Today's UU Lent theme is transformation. We invite you to engage one another with the question, how are you serving as an agent of transformation? How do you seek to transform the world around you? The offering will now be generously given and gratefully received. Those who wish to do so are invited to join in the unison affirmation. We gather not for ourselves alone, but to use our common power to build the beloved community within and beyond these walls. We create and reaffirm this covenant this day to make justice flourish, to practice compassion amidst difference, and to embody transformative love. Please rise in body or in spirit to join in singing hymn number 207 in the Gray Hymnal, Earth Was Given as a Garden. We rose with the gifts the universe has embedded in every cell of us. Gifts of song, of dance, of laughter, gifts of wisdom, of strength, of courage. Go forth, awake to your gifts, responding to life as it calls you forward. Go in peace. please join me in reciting together the words for printed in your order of service for extinguishing the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. This service has ended, but our life of service continues. I invite us to make our way downstairs to the annual chili cook-off.